All right, so we're currently in quarantine mode in Washington State, so I'm super bored, and I'm just gonna go over how to deck out a John Boat 1436 Alumacraft. In the picture, you've got your foam for the floor, you got two pieces of plywood for the decking, half inch, and then there's 8 5/4 cedar deck boards. The cedar deck boards are going to be used for your framing. Super lightweight. The whole deck weighs probably around 70, 80 pounds, I believe. I never weighed it. I can lift it out of the boat by myself. It is not permanently fastened either, so if you ever want to remove it, it's a piece of cake. So this picture right here showing you how you're going to lay your board out, your 5/4 deck boards, all right? Start easy, start with the foam. Put the foam in the bottom of the floor. The foam is not for flotation. The foam is for sound dampening. It'll, if you drop a lure on the floor, you don't get the bang of the aluminum when the lure hits it. It does not make the boat float better. This is one of the things like I'd seen on the internet where you got people that don't have a clue saying things that don't make any sense. The only time it would float is if the boat were to flip over. Um, and even then, those chunks of styrofoam are not going to make it float any better. All right, so there's your floor. As you can see, you've got these ribs right here. Those ribs do not allow the plywood to fit. So you just notch them. As you can see right here, you just notch them. The tool I was using to do all the cutting, there is no jigsaw. It's right there. It's a worm drive skill saw. Skill saw will be the only tool you will need to do this. Jigsaws, yeah, they're great, whatever, but learn how to use a skill saw. It's a way more useful tool, and you can make some pretty intricate cuts with it once you get good with it. I used the Bondo there to fill in any voids on the plywood, and then I just lightly sanded them. That was a little bit of overkill. You wouldn't even need to sand it as long as you get it smooth. The carpet will hide any of those. All right. So with these 5/4 deck boards, the way the seats on this boat are laid out, it's gonna pop that 5/4 board up above the lip of the boat. So to get it to lay correctly, you have to notch these boards. And when you make your measurements, make sure that, yeah, notch it so it sits flush with the top. But remember, you're going to have plywood on top. So take that into consideration when you make the cuts. I can't remember what I cut it. I think it was like 2.5 inches off, which will leave you with, what would that be? 3 inches of material there. All right. 3 inches of material with this short of spacing with your framing will not jeopardize the strength of the material. So here you can see all the boards laid out. Again, you can see how those notches work. It's just like framing a deck in your backyard. The other thing I noticed when people were decking or making these decks is they would lay the piece of wood the other way. All your strength in this material is going to come from laying these boards like this, vertical. If you lay them the other way it'll bow. So here you go. I attached this piece of 1/2 inch plywood just using a pin nailer or a trim nailer. You can buy one at Harbor Freight for like 20 bucks and a pack of nails for like $3. So here you'll see that, oh, the plywood didn't fit the whole way. Why did you cut it like that? Well, there's this thing called shear, and what happens is you've got the grain of wood with the framing running one way, and now I have the grain of the plywood running this other way. And when you connect those together, it's science here. You run one set of grain one way, one set of grain the other way. It'll get you the most strength out of your materials you can achieve. Use what you got. These little boards right here are for my storage underneath the deck, I believe. So here you can see again how it gets laid out, and then there's the other piece up there. So to get this deck to fit in there, this is where I'm showing you these pictures. I know you're missing out by not actually seeing how it's done, but I laid the piece of plywood on the top of the boat as best I could, and then along the lip of the boat I took a pencil and I scribed the boat to the bottom of the board, right? And then when I flipped it over, I cut it with the skill saw. Did not use a jigsaw to do this. Just scribe your boat to the bottom of the piece of plywood, cut it with your skill saw, see if it fits. If it doesn't, you know, run your pencil down again, give yourself a fresh line to go with, and just lightly shave off pieces of wood. This right here with the cedar is overkill. If you use cedar, you do not need to paint your stuff unless you're, you know, soaking this thing like a submarine. The plywood, however, it just being normal plywood, I used oil-based Kills latex paint. Make sure you paint both sides. If you're going to paint something, you always paint every side. So far, I have no corrosion, no rot, no anything. I've taken this thing out in the rain and just dried it out with a fan. Works great. So there's all your decking laid out, painted. All right, now these parts right here, just avoid this stuff. Do not put extra seats in. That's the carpet. Here's all my supplies. You know, I was all pumped when I got this pedestal seat. I was like, oh, this is great. What happens is it just gets in the way of your fishing. All right, so now to connect this piece of decking to the framing, use screws. Just remember, space them about, you know, I would say 8 inches apart from each other. You don't need more than that. Screws are super, super strong. And then remember, running the vertical or the grain the one way and this grain the other way. You'll shear it up and make this super strong. There's no flex at all when I stand on this. I weigh 160 pounds. And I used a chalk box. You don't need chalk, but, you know, had it laying around, so I did it that way. All right, so now it's starting to take shape. Got the 15 horse on the back. Again, there's the seat. I cut that hole with a hole saw. I regret it now. I wish I would have never put that seat on the front. I don't even use it anymore. You can see the screws there. Don't use nails, use screws. If you ever have to replace the deck, it's a lot easier to pull screws out than to rip a bunch of nails out of your wood. All right, so to cut these hatches that I put in the boat, as you can see, I used the skill saw. And again, I took all this into account before I did this boat, but those are my hatches. I laid the framing out. You know, I remembered where they were at, measured it, and left a lip so the door could fit on there. And I did both sides. And as you can see right here, that piece didn't fit, right? So that's how you draw a line on there. There's a way that guys that work with wood know how to take a carpenter pencil and scribe a real small, you know, 1/8 inch line without using a measuring tape. You just run your finger down the side of the wood and hold the pencil in your hand. If you're going to be playing with power tools, learn how to do that. All right, next slide. So there's the hatch right there looking down into the boat. Again, foam under there for sound dampening. There we go again. Some more. It's me with my footwear. I labeled the doors. That way I don't screw it up when you cut a piece out, use the same piece that was there. So, all right, there's the floor in the front. With the carpeting, when you put the glue down, make sure and spread it nice and thin. I did way too much. I'd never worked with carpet glue before. But if you use too much, it'll come through this cheap Home Depot carpet. All right, so that's how I cut out the doors. Painted the wood green in there. I got a sample of olive green paint from Home Depot. I don't know how much it cost. It was like a couple bucks. Again, it's not necessarily, you don't need to paint it or anything. I don't know why I took so many pictures here. All right, mounting that motor on there. I didn't need to adjust anything. I didn't need to put any blocking in. In fact, when I lifted up, the measurements were so good that that little piece gently rests on the lip of the boat there. So they're sitting on the deck on that stupid pedestal seat that I didn't need. These little handles right here I got at Bass Pro Shop. I think they were like a couple bucks. There's with the fish finder on there. Another thing real quick with this carpet, with the edges, I just took a heat gun and I just got real close with it and singed them and, you know, cauterized the edges so they didn't fray. There's been no fraying whatsoever with that carpet. As you can see, this door I did first, that door I did second, and the reason I know that is because the thread of the carpet wasn't straight. I was going to go back and fix that and everything, but just remember when you lay your carpet out, match what it looks like as best you can. There you can kind of see it standing out again, but it's nothing too major. I don't even notice it now that I've stepped on it so much. These hinges right here are just zinc. Again, no corrosion. This boat doesn't go in salt water. So that's what it looks like at the end of this project. I actually added a piece of scrap plywood I had laying around right here. The other thing I didn't get to show you guys is that on this framing, I put a piece of Velcro running down here, and then I put a piece of Velcro on the seat. There's also pieces of Velcro up here on the front, and the Velcro is industrial strength. They sell it at Home Depot. I think it's like 18 bucks or something. I've gone down the freeway going, 75 miles per hour with this thing on the back, and the deck has not lifted up. The weight of the motor and everything else and the Velcro, this thing ain't coming out. I'm gonna go out in the garage now and I'll show you what it looks like. All right, so this is it, and let's take a look here. So that's how hard it is to take this stuff out. Now I keep the bungee cords back here just because you never know. But that's just on this piece right here. On the front, it doesn't matter. So, and as you can see, I don't even use that anymore. You can see there was a seat here. Again, that stuff gets in the way. These boats aren't that big. It ain't worth it. Now I can have somebody else fish in the back. The other thing, I don't know if you'll be able to see this. Yeah, definitely not. Anyways, the weld pulled out on the front of this boat from the bow stop. So the way I've connected it to the trailer now is I've got a strap here, and it runs down, and I strap it on that eye bolt. This thing ain't coming out. But yeah, this boat's super fun. If you have any questions, I wish I would have been able to film this whole thing when I was building it. It took me about 3 days. Most of that time was spent, watching carpet glue dry. So that's how you frame one of these up.